So the other day, Sunburst came into Ponyville to visit Starlight. They were trying to catch up and so forth when Sunburst told her that he really wanted to go antiquing. She was kind of surprised because she didn't know that Sunburst actually enjoyed antiquing. While going through the Ponyville antique shop, they encountered Twilight Sparkle, and Sunburst and Twilight hit it off over their shared love of equestrian history. The next day, after seeing how well Sunburst hit it off with Twilight, Starlight really wanted to get him away from Twilight so she and he could have the whole day to themselves. So she took him to Sweet Apple Acres to look at some apple trees because she remembered having apple juice with him when they were foals. Although that's not really something you really bond over. All foals have apple juice at that age. Anyhow, she did some apple bucking and surprisingly woke up Trixie. I wonder how Applejack feels about the fact that Trixie's been loafing around on the apple farm sleeping under her apple trees. Once Trixie was awoken, she offered to show Sunburst some of her magic tricks. That's when Sunburst revealed that even though he's not good at real magic, he's always had a passion for stage magic. And he and Trixie began to hit it off, feeling upset that her friend had special bonding moments with Twilight Sparkle and now Trixie and not her. Starlight decided to show Sunburst the mirror pool, even though that meant breaking the seal and sneaking around behind every pony's back basically, and potentially doing something rather dangerous perhaps. Starlight showed Sunburst the mirror pole. He was impressed by it at first, but then Maud shows up. It seems that the mirror pole was attached to the other end of Maud's cavern, and she'd recently dug a tunnel connecting the two locations. So even if Starlight hadn't broken the seal to the mirror pole, a way to the mirror pole was still opened up on this particular day. Only if it had been just Maud and not Starlight, probably no pony would have known about this. Anyhow, as Maud digs for gemstones and so forth, she and Sunburst start bonding over a shared love for geology, which, again, Starlight didn't know he had an interest in that. It seems a lot has changed since the two were young, and Starlight was becoming more and more desperate to hold on to something that they had in common. So she cast a spell which either sent them back in time and turned them back into foals, or just created a very effective illusion. I'm not particularly sure which. I think it might be the latter. Anyhow, she tried to get Sunburst to play their favorite childhood board game while in their childhood bodies, and Sunburst called her out for being creepy and doing something that he didn't want to do when he would rather do adult stuff. Starlight was upset by this and was really feeling like she was losing her friend until Sunburst decided to talk to some of the new friends that he's had in common with Starlight now to find out what it is that they all have in common with Starlight. When he realized that there is one thing that Starlight and he both enjoy, and that is their favorite board game, he decided to create a full-sized version that was more appropriate for full-grown adult ponies to play, and they ended up playing the game together and having a good time, and all of Starlight's friends, who were now also Sunburst's friends, started to bond with each other, and things worked out pretty well. It's a pretty interesting story, and in some ways kind of similar to what Rarity and Sweetie Belle went through earlier, when Rarity had to come to terms with the fact that Sweetie Belle was outgrowing some of her old childhood interests. It also had a very, very important lead into the season finale, when we see Sunburst doing his little loot crate blind bag opening thing and discovering the star-swirled bearded book in the barrel. That's pretty much what this episode was a setup episode for the season finale, and that's something that I enjoy when shows give us that. In addition to all of that, we got to see Maud and Trixie again, and got to expand on their relationship and Starlight's relationship and Sunburst and everything like that. And we got to learn more about all of those characters, which was also very important. The other thing of note is that this could very easily be an episode that would inspire fan art makers on DeviantArt or thereabouts to make all sorts of fan art, as there were several opportunities. Everything from Trixie being bound by chains to Starlight and Sunburst being turned back into foals. It feels like pretty much everything this episode threw at us is something that fan artists would enjoy making pictures of quite a lot. Overall, this was a great episode and a huge welcomed change coming off of the last one, which was pretty horrible. I'd like to say that this was the best episode ever, but really that's just in spite of the fact of how horrible the last episode was. This is still pretty enjoyable an episode, maybe not as great as I hype it up to be when I compare it to the last episode with Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash, which I feel like every Pinkie Pie Rainbow Dash episode I've ever seen has been less than enjoyable, almost like the way Spite episodes go, but I can't say that definitely for certain. What we did get here was still all in all a pretty good time, and an important thing to have considering what's coming up next. But more on what happens next when we get to what happens next. Some other things to note is that there were additional foreshadowings for the next episode besides just the book that Sunburst discovered in his little barrel. Anyhow, that's about all I have to think about for this one. The season's almost wrapped up, so we'll soon be talking about other stuff if videos are made at all. Anyhow, thank you for watching and good night.